What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one armed madman. And back with me today, we've got Eric Jackman. Eric, it's a pleasure to see you again. It's great to have you. You were actually my first guest on the podcast. So 200 and something episodes later, and we got you back.
Holy shit, really?
Yeah,
That's
it goes
crazy, man.
fast, right?
Nick, it's
It,
good good
it,
to be with you again, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
yeah, no problem. It feels like it was just yesterday. It really
When
does.
when was that?
It was about 2 years ago, I think, two and a half, maybe.
Okay.
I didn't check
Wow.
the exact date. I just went and looked back, and it was like episode 5, and I think we're on 210 now. So
Awesome,
205
man.
episodes later, just rocking and rolling. So how you doing? How's life treating you?
Life's good, man. It's wild out there as anyone who pays even a little bit of attention to
Yeah.
the world and the world happenings and geopolitics and stuff going around in their local neighborhood and their state houses. I mean, everything is crazy. But the working man continues and carries on and just goes to work every day and keeps paying the bills, keeps dealing with the devaluing of the dollar.
Mm.
Shit, man, it's a grind, but I'm very happy to be in New Hampshire. I know you said Idaho there at the beginning. I
Yep.
know Idaho and New Hampshire, certain pop segments of the population have very similar characteristics in that they like to be left alone and not bugged by the state. So I really can't complain. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I grew up in California, so like living in California, it's kind of hard to describe like how much of a bubble you really live in. Like, especially where I grew up, it was in Northern California. We were like in wine country, right close to the redwoods, close to the coast. We were about like an hour and a half from San Francisco. And you feel like there's nowhere else to live in the world. Like, why would you leave this beautiful place, you know? And I never even like considered leaving California like full time. I moved to Hawaii for a year. I moved to Maui for a year, but that was kind of just like a on a whim type thing, and that was, kind of an upgrade in a lot of ways from California. It's another beautiful place, but, like, if somebody would've told me I'd be living in Idaho 20 years ago, it's like, what would I be doing in Idaho? Like, I live in the best place already, and kind of luckily, I got priced out of California when I got hurt. I was working for a company based in North Dakota or based in Idaho, and, like, we were working in North Dakota. I was making, like, 14 bucks an hour, and I was working a lot of overtime, but, like, once I got hurt, there was just no way to live in California on the wages that I got hurt on, so I ended up moving here and bought a house before COVID. It's been, like, 11 years ago now, and got in on the good real estate prices, and I love it here. A lot of the people that kind of gave me shit for moving up here. Oh, what are you doing? Why are you leaving? They kind of live here now, or wish they lived here now. So it's a good place. It's definitely not as beautiful as Northern California. I wish we had more trees and less business parks, but it is what it is.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you were able to score a house. That just feels so out of reach for so many of us
I know.
older millennials. The average age now to buy a house in America is 40 years old,
Yeah.
and I will be 40 this October. And I live with my twin. We have an apartment together, and the thought of buying a house is just it seems just like an unattainable,
Yeah.
distant dream that is vaporizing the further and further we get into the I mean, you could call it largely manufactured bubble that is created around all sectors, really, including the housing market. So I have so much respect and happiness to hear about people who own a house because I know it's a big to do. And there's pros and cons to renting. I rent an apartment. So if something major happens, I'm not on the hook to fix it.
Yeah.
Whereas your house there that you have, man, you have a big ticket item go, you're on the hook to come up with how you're going to pay for it and figure out financing or whatever it is. So you lived in Hawaii for a year. When was that?
It was around, I guess, like 2010, probably
Okay.
somewhere in that area. Yeah, I was a drug addict. I was
Oh,
looking for a
geez.
change. I was when I was younger, I raced dirt bikes growing up, and
Okay.
it was one of those things where I kind of got hurt, and then just started running out of money,
Mm.
and couldn't really race anymore, blew a bike up, and I was just kinda out of it, and at that point, like, I'd been smoking a lot of pot and taking Vicodins whenever I could because I was beat up all the time, and I got into the Oxycontin after that,
Oh,
so it
okay.
was that thing, and it just
Mhm.
destroyed my life for about 5, 6 years, and moved to Hawaii to try to get away from it, but it was there too, and it was one of those things where you kinda learn, like, as you get into recovery that it's not, like, where you are, it's who you are,
It's
and
you.
yeah, like, you can move wherever and still find that stuff. It's gonna
Mhm.
be around, and if you don't change you, it doesn't matter where
Right.
you put yourself, so that was kinda the problem there, and I came back and life just went down the tubes even worse and finally ended up getting clean, moved to San Francisco into like a sober living facility with a couple people that I met. Like I didn't go to rehab. I went to this like it was called like a crisis residential center, which was kind of like a rehab. And there was a couple people there that I got close with and they wanted to move to San Francisco. One of them was from there. And we found this like sober living facility that I lived in for like 9 months and just really turned my life around and, life's been
That's great.
aside from getting the old chop,
Well,
like, everything's been good
sure.
since then.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, man. I'm really glad to hear that. And the Sackler family in Purdue made sure that that shit was in every street corner,
Yeah,
in every community, in every state, in every nook and cranny of the United States. And they knew that it was addictive, and they knew what it would do to the human population. They did not give a fuck. They're evil, reptilian, profit-driven maggots
yeah,
who only care about bottom line. And New Hampshire, man, we ravaged by the opioid crisis. I have so I was a graduating class in a high school of a grand total of probably 530, 540 kids. My graduating class was probably 110, 115. And I have a handful of classmates who died from such addictions.
yeah.
So it impacts everyone, man. I'm really glad to hear you were able to get out of that and get beyond it. Um, it's just such an insidious creation, an
It's
insidious thing.
Yeah, and the doctors are culpable too. The doctors all
Oh,
knew. They
they're
were
in on
smart
it.
enough,
I mean,
they were
they're
smart enough
bought.
to know that opioids are addictive. They're
Oh,
not idiots, you know what I
so many of
mean?
those doctors are bought and paid, man.
Mhm.
They can be bought and paid and corrupted just like the fucking milkman.
Yeah,
Like anybody, it doesn't matter. Any industry, any business. We've both been around long enough and
yeah,
looked at a lot of the parapolitics, and I've been in and out of politics the last 20 years myself, to know that any sector, any corner of any industry, people can be bought and paid for, and they are every day of the week.
yeah, absolutely. And that stuff was so addictive. Like, I've done a lot of drugs in my life, I've I've dabbled in a lot of different shit, and there was nothing that hooked you quite like that. Like, I had so many buddies that, like, weren't into drugs at all, like,
Mhm.
they smoked weed. Like, I was from Northern California, so, like, everybody kinda smoked weed where I was from. It was where all the weed in the country essentially was grown until legalization started to spread, and, like, dude, some of these guys would just try it once, and then you're hooked immediately. I had one buddy that tried it with me one time, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get into that," and he just kinda didn't, but, like, dude, I had a buddy that I introduced it to. This is, like, one of the things that, like, really sucked the worst about it for me, and, like, it still screws me up from time to time, where, like, I kind of introduced him to it, and for some reason, he just had a massive tolerance right away. Where, like, I was chopping up 80s into, like, quarters and eighths and stuff like that, and he would just do, like, 280s right off the bat, which was it's insane, like, the
Mm.
amount that he would do, and then one day, he ran out, couldn't find any on the streets. He bought a bunch of Xanax and some methadone, and he went to sleep, and he just never woke back up.
Mm.
And the
Damn.
sad part is, like, a lot of people thought he committed suicide, and, like, for me, like, I kinda know how these things work, and I don't believe for a second that he did. I think that, like, he had to take so many pills to like stop that. The withdrawal is just indescribable. It's the worst
Yeah.
thing ever. Like for people who know about like engines or something, I describe it as like an engine running at 250 degrees with no oil in it. Like
Mm.
every part of you is just dying and screaming at you from the inside. And I think that he had to take so many methadone and so many like Xanax, and that's a bad mix. Like, you don't wanna mix those things too much, it's dangerous, and I think that he just took too much and, you know,
Bummer,
went out in
accidental
his sleep.
overdose.
Yeah, he was, like, 22 years old, it's a
Yeah,
freaking bummer, just a waste of a life. He was a really smart guy, and
it's it's a battle, man. I'm sorry to hear about that.
yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my main vice and poison is alcohol, and I refrain from using it 6 months out of the year. So from January 1st to July 1st, I just clean slate that 6 months, and I don't drink any alcohol. And then from July till through the holidays, I'll enjoy some. I like light beer. Light beer is my favorite these days, and some champagne around the holidays. So that my my organs like that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's balanced because I mean people can handle drugs and that stuff, and they can approach it with extremes, like extreme, like I'm never going to drink again, I'm never going to do this again, to I don't care, I'm just going to do it as much as I want till the wheels fall off.
yeah,
So I don't know. I just one year decided instead of just doing a dry January, I'm going to challenge myself because I like to have things on a calendar. I like to see number and progress.
mhm,
I said I will not drink for 6 months, and I'm pretty sure I can do it. And I live right next door to one of the best breweries in all of New Hampshire, Post and Beam Brewing. It's literally in my neighborhood. Very good friends with the owner. They have fantastic beer, and I can go up there no problem, hang with everyone who's having a beer, and I don't have an issue with that. So
yeah.
that's that's how I approach my main my main chemical and vice of choice.
I feel like once it's out of your system for a month or so, it doesn't really bother you all that much. Like,
Yeah.
I was completely clean for, like, 5 years before I got injured, and then, like, immediately I was on a bunch of fentanyl and a bunch of stuff just because of the severity of the injury that I had, and I've been kind of on opioids since then, but, like, I don't take more than I'm prescribed. I don't really notice that I'm taking it anymore. It doesn't seem to,
Yeah, is
like.
it just part of like pain management in
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
everyday aches and pains with your
Yeah.
injury and
Exactly.
just yeah.
And then I started drinking again a couple years ago, but I drink like, booze has never really been my thing. I drank a lot when I was in high school until I started smoking weed, and then I just kind of never really drank all that much, and I
Yeah.
bartended for a long time, so, like, being
Well,
around it all the time was
here.
just not great. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
really care to drink it. Like, you're around drunks all the time, and I don't know. And I started drinking, like, I don't know, probably a year or 2 ago, and I have, like, maybe 6 drinks a year. If,
Oh,
I
that's
have,
good.
like,
Yeah.
I'll have an old fashioned when I go out to dinner with the family for birthdays
Nice.
or Christmas or whatever it is, and that's about it. I don't really feel the need to do it. And I started smoking weed a couple years after I got hurt too, and I ended up quitting close to a year ago now, and it just got too expensive, and it's kind of sketchy here in Idaho. Like, you have to
Well,
drive over to Oregon to buy it, and, like,
oh,
the
okay.
route that you drive is a sketchy route, and there's a ton of cops on there, and
Could be the
it
Fed. They call it the Fed highway.
exactly,
It's a
and I
different
just
kind of
got a
Fed
little bit
highway.
paranoid, and I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna stop." And
Yeah.
after a couple months, like, I don't even miss it anymore.
Yeah. Well, on the cusp of 40, the hangovers are an absolute nightmare
Yeah,
if you let it rip. And a night before boozing, and you're just, it's like for me, it's 2 days to recover now. So that's not worth it. I got to really pick and choose when I want to go real hardcore with it for a night. And then yeah, the weed. I had a weed phase in my 20s. I really enjoyed it and thought I was some kind of revolutionary in my 20s.
yeah,
Smoking weed and being like legalize it and all that. And I don't know. I enjoy it. The last few times I did it, I got super paranoid, and the power and potency of it, even from when I was in my 20s to now approaching 40, is kind of insane. So I'll try to, if I'm ever going to do it, it's with someone who's kind of a regular user, so they know they have it dialed in, they know the levels of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's it's always a constant battle, man.
yeah,
Man versus the inner versus the outside, and the temptations of all the things on the outside. So
yeah, yeah.
we're all works in progress, man.
So on the theme of kind of like, drugs and I guess, like, poisons and foods and stuff like that, you did some work with, RFK in the past election. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I worked. I was one of RFK Jr.'s New Hampshire staffers, and an advisor to his campaign. So I met RFK Jr. In February of 2023. I mean, I'll back up a little bit. My brother and I had always been huge fans of him because of his willingness to speak out on pretty controversial topics. Not controversial to people like us, but
Mhm.
from the class and the world that Bobby comes from, you raise his eyebrows. You're like, I can't believe he just said that. And he always kind of, to me, was a little different than the rest of his family and had courage in ways that a lot of his family and people in those elite circles and the super wealthy and the connected, you would never hear them publicly say into a hot microphone. So he was always like a dream guest for our podcast. We started the podcast in 2015, and talk about woo woo manifestation. Write down 10 names of people you want to book on your
Yeah.
podcast. And RFK Jr. was like at the top of that list. So flash forward to beginning of 2023. I get a call. My brother gets a call from a friend here in New Hampshire who's a very piped in political operative. He's been in the game for 50 years. He goes, how would you guys like to meet Bobby Kennedy Jr.? We were like, yeah. He said he's coming to New Hampshire and he's thinking about running for president. And that just was so out of left field for me. I had no idea it was on his radar to run. So he went and spoke at St. Anselm College, which is famous for its Institute of Politics. They host presidential debates there. And he spoke for about an hour and a half, and he had copies of his book he was signing. So I was very inspired by what he said in his speech, really speaking out against COVID censorship and people who push back on what I call the flu world order, stupid 19, and how insane people went, and how anyone who was a dissent, a voice of dissonance, or pushing back on it, or just even being like, well, I don't know what the hell is in this thing. I don't want that shot, which was my posture. I didn't argue with anyone the whole time about it, but I knew from the jump I didn't want to get the boop,
Yeah.
and I didn't get it. So Bobby to me was courageously speaking out about things, using his platform, using his voice, which of course had been censored several times, and he got kicked off X, he got kicked, well, Twitter at the time, he got kicked off Instagram. Always troubles with his YouTube videos. So I went and saw him, met him afterwards, got a picture with him, and then I wrote a piece about it for my Substack. And the Ron Paul report asked me, Dan McAdams asked me if he could reprint it. I said, of course. So he printed it on the Ron Paul report. So it made the rounds in our media
Mhm.
ecosystem, got some exposure in it. And it led to me getting on um, OAN, the OAN network. And I did an interview on there and just kind of talked about Bobby and his potential candidacy and what that would look like for the race, and kind of just talked up the fact that I would love to see him be in the race and challenge Joe Biden, and let's try and have a real Democratic primary here with a Kennedy, with an actual Kennedy who's saying courageous things, a lot like his uncle and his father did before they were killed. And through a mutual person who I met at the event, um, I let him know that, hey, man, I have a podcast. I'd love to have Bobby on my podcast. It's been a long time dream to have him on. And this guy connected, gave all my info to Bobby, and my interview with OAN went online, and the next day it was retweeted by RFK Jr. with a tag and me in it, and I was just like a that was an epic moment. I couldn't believe that. It's like, oh, that's awesome. RFK Jr. is following me now. He just tweeted out, gave me a shout out for my analysis about him possibly running. And then flash forward maybe a week or two from then, my brother and I are coming back from a Mike Pence event. We went and had dinner with a local Republican group that was hosting Mike Pence. Not a Mike Pence fan, but I had an opportunity to go meet him, ask him a question, get a photo with him. So that was pretty cool. And we're driving home, and I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize. So I pull off to the side of the road. I answer it, and it's RFK Jr. calling
Wow.
me and saying, "Eric, it's Bobby Kennedy. I heard about your podcast. I would love to do it." So that started a dialogue, and this was maybe a few weeks leading up to his official announcement in April of 23. And we got to the point where we nailed down a date, and my brother and I actually got the first long form sit down podcast interview with him the day after his announcement for president.
That's what I was gonna ask next was it the first interview? Because I remember watching that interview and thinking, "I think they nailed the first interview that he did after announcing," which is man, talk about like a bucket list for a podcaster, right? Like, you can't ask
Dude,
for anything better than that.
it was a dream come true, man. It was first surreal to get the follow on X and then get a tweet and a shout out, and then they get a phone call from him out of the blue. It was very exciting. It was exciting stuff, and then we could sit down with him for over an hour, ask him whatever we wanted. He doesn't screen anything, he doesn't vet anything. He says, "You guys ask me whatever you want," and we had a fascinating over-hour conversation with him about anything we wanted to. You know, it was enthralling sitting across from him, hearing him talk about his father and uncle John F. Kennedy and his father Robert F. Kennedy's assassinations and his views on that, the glaring inconsistencies in official reports. So that left my brother and I really excited, and I kind of slept on it and for a few days, and I'm like, you know what? There's no one else I'm going to support for president in 2024, and we stayed in touch, and eventually. Um, I was between jobs, and I just had a conversation with Bobby about it, and he was looking to hire people here in New Hampshire. And Dennis Kucinich was his campaign manager, and I've known Dennis since I was in college, going back to 2006. I had first met him in '06 and had stayed in touch with him throughout the years, and had actually last seen Dennis in February of 23 at the Rage Against the War Machine rally that Reed Coverdale and I spoke at in DC outside the White House. We were like the B team speakers in front of the White House, the podcaster bros. And then like Dan McAdams, Ron Paul, Tulsi,
Yeah.
Dennis Kucinich, Chris Hedges were like, the A team speakers in front of the Lincoln Memorial. So Dennis spoke there. I said hi to him. We kind of reconnected. And then I flash forward to April, and Dennis Kucinich is Bobby Kennedy's campaign manager. So a lot of synchronicity and a lot of things kind of lined up. That
Yeah.
was
And
an
man,
arc going back many years.
he's such a great figure to have in politics right now because the guy is just so smart. He's so on top of it. Like, there's
He is.
very few politicians out there that are capable of speaking in the range that he is. And I don't mean his voice. I mean the range of
Yeah,
like he's just so informed on so many subjects. He's a great guy. Like I have a ton of respect for him for the same reasons that you do. Like being willing to speak up about the things that he's done and suing the people that he sued, like, with
that's right.
living in the world, like, me and you, it's hard for us to, like, understand like, you are probably more capable of understanding the world that he lives in than I am, like, I was familiar with some rich people that I was kind of in the orbit of when I lived in San
Mhm.
Francisco, but it's still,
Right.
like, there's a different level of, like he's like American royalty in a lot of ways, like, there's
Yes.
very few families within the American culture that are as close to royalty than the Kennedys. And to like have the courage to say what he says and to sue the people that he sues, it's courageous, man. And you know, he's a great figure to have within the zeitgeist.
Yeah. Well said, man. I really do equate him to American political royalty, from that elite and wealthy class of families um, that have held the highest levels of power in our government. I mean, in his book American Values, and we touched on this in our interview. John Lennon randomly came by Hickory Hill where he lives. KGB spies, CIA spooks, CIA directors, ambassadors, leaders, dignitaries. I mean, you name it, man. He had all variety of those kinds of people coming through from when he was born till all the way through. So, what really excited me about his campaign is you do have that inside perspective that RFK Jr. has and grew up around. But what was so amazing and refreshing about him is he's at ease with blue collar people. He's at
Yeah.
ease with regular people who don't have anything, who are just 9 to 5 working people. Even though it's polar opposites of existence. Um, so that was so evident, man. Like right when I met him. I mean, I know this sounds, maybe this is cringe or silly, but like locking eyes with him, man, is like yeah, he's a piece of living American history,
Yeah.
and there's an aura. The dude has a real aura about him, and he knows a lot about many different topics, and he's so well read, and he's so well traveled. he can back up so many things with like an amazing anecdote, like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I hung out with those guys. I hung out with the guy who did the study on that, or the legal team who was involved in that lawsuit, or I led that lawsuit. So
Yeah.
he has such a deep bench to pull from. And we saw a lot of that with the campaign. It was an amazing, it was quite a coalition, man. It was a crazy coalition of Americans from across the political landscape that got under the Kennedy banner. And
You
I was really, really honored and psyched to be one of the flag men, like they say in Game of Thrones, a bannerman for Kennedy here in New Hampshire.
Yeah. When I lived in San Francisco, I was doing a lot of like AA meetings,
Mm,
and one of the most interesting things about that is like you can be in the financial district, which is right near the Tenderloin, which is, the richest people in the city, along with the most poor and most desolate people in the city. And they go into these AA meetings and they're just rubbing shoulders, and that's you don't see that very often within American society where the lowest of the low are rubbing shoulders with the highest of the high. And when I look at RFK, I see somebody who has been to those same meetings. He had that same type of background. And I think, like reading between the lines, it probably made him very comfortable with the blue collar man, like you were saying, because when you go into these places, you have to humble yourself and realize that we're all on the same path here and that we're all trying to better ourselves. And there's,
that's right.
just because you've got money or you've got a last name doesn't mean you're any better than the person sitting next to you. And like I would guess that that did a lot for him in like allowing him to relate to the everyday man.
Very well said. Yeah, it's such a great point you bring up there, man. And Bobby's publicly talked about this, so I can, talk on a little bit. He does attend a meeting every day,
Yeah.
and that is a very important thing for Bobby in his life. And he's a very spiritual guy, very spiritual person. His faith means a lot to him. Um, and that just shows, man. It shines through in everything he does and how he handles himself and how he approaches people. And he knows that he's a custodian of greatness. He really is, in my opinion. I mean, the Kennedys. I grew up worshiping the Kennedy family, the leader JFK, the fallen king, the martyr, the man who had vision for world peace, the man who went up against the darkest, most entrenched, powerful forces and was struck down because of it. And then the brother taking the baton and seeking that office and most likely being the next president in 68, only to be killed and
Yeah.
gunned down in what clearly was not a single shooter and another cover up. And then RFK in 2024 to grab the baton and go for it and do it. And he knew very well it was going to be a risky endeavor.
Yeah.
There were threats all the time, man. I mean, his security team did not fuck around. Gavin DeBecker and DeBecker Associates. That's a serious outfit of private security, and it was costing probably over $1 million a month to provide private security for Bobby for these events. So he knew it was at stake, and yeah, it's great. So I just tell people, I say, yeah, we didn't get the White House, but you know what? This was in my view, the most successful independent campaign for president
Mhm.
in the history of the United States because we leveraged the millions of people and grassroots support in media and fundraising machine that was built up around Kennedy. And we're able to leverage that into a presidential endorsement to Trump and then a cabinet position in the White House
That was actually
in
gonna be
in,
my
in the government.
my next question was about the independent run. So, like, when he announced, like, I was pumped when he announced because, like, I looked at it as, like, a cleansing mechanism for the Democratic Party, like a chaser
Mhm.
after a nasty shot of cheap tequila, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I was apprehensive about his run as a Democrat because it was like, I don't think the Democratic Party wants him there. I don't
no,
think they want to go back to, his father's party, to his uncle's party. Like, I think that they're on a trajectory that they aren't interested in changing. I do think that there's a decent amount of people out there that are, you know, very willing and hopeful that the party will go back to that position, but I'm not sure that that person is in the majority at this point. Like, I really don't know. So, like, what went into the decision to decide to run an independent rather than a Democrat? Because it happened fairly quickly, if I remember right.
yeah. Well, it was kind of several things in a culmination. I mean, I can speak to some things that I was a part of here in New Hampshire. So one of the things that I did as his New Hampshire state coordinator and advisor, while we were still in the Democratic primary, was get in touch with. We have 10 counties here in New Hampshire, so I tracked down. Um, the contact info for the county chairs of the Democratic Party, just to introduce myself, get a conversation going about Bobby's campaign. Of course, I knew there was going to be hostility, but really what it was a complete icing and shutting out of Bobby's campaign by the actual Democratic machine here in New Hampshire. I maybe heard back from a couple of them about setting up a call just to introduce myself and then see if they possibly had interest in putting an event together or having me come speak to their committees and hand out material and just promote RFK's campaign. And basically crickets, man. I didn't
Mm,
get anywhere with that. They were all like, the local committee here in Peterborough, where I live, they said we had an expert come and speak to us, and we determined that RFK is dangerous. He's a threat to the health of our society. He's a disinfo agent, all this bullshit.
yeah.
And that's kind of largely what I heard from the party officials throughout the state. And then when Bobby agreed to go speak at PorkFest, basically the libertarian Woodstock that we have here in
Yeah.
New Hampshire every year, um, that really ruffled the feathers of the Democratic Party. And Ray Buckley, who is the party chairman, who's been in that position for a long time, put out a nasty press release about Bobby, made a whole stink about it in the media, national media and state media. So it was pretty clear, man, that the Democrats were going to ice Bobby out. Um, the machinery wanted nothing to do with it, but a lot of the people, especially like boomers who have fond memories of the Kennedys, they were more open to it. And then, of course, millennials my age and maybe a little younger who were kind of based and loved Bobby for speaking out on COVID and that sort of thing were interested. But I'll tell you what, man, we got treated the best and the best reception from people who identified like as Republicans or
Mhm.
libertarians.
Yeah.
And him getting that invite to PorkFest definitely case in point there that he was very popular with them. Now, of course, they're not going to agree with him on everything. I mean, Kennedy, he has his record, championing the environment and regulation and suing polluters. And I'm sure wherever he was on guns during those days when he was a mainline Democrat was at odds with Republicans and at odds with libertarians. I mean, that's just the facts on the ground. But the bigger picture truth that he was speaking, excuse me, I think eclipsed that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of interest there. But so we that started happening in every state where we were going to be campaigning and trying to run a Democratic primary. And of course, they shut the process down. They said, no, Joe Biden will be our nominee. You saw the guy like Dean Phillips from Minnesota run, the congressman who I met a few times. I actually really like Dean Phillips. We disagree on a lot, but we do agree on some things. And one thing I agree with him on was having an open primary in 2024 because he was early and often. And, Bobby said this too. Joe Biden is not going to make it through another term. He's got his issues and he's just not up for this. So we need to have an open and rigorous process where we have an actual primary and the people vote to choose who the nominee will be. So I do have to give the GOP credit for that, man. They have a way more open process, bigger tent than the Democrats do. And that's why the Democrats have been getting their ass kicked. But
Yeah.
that could be changing now with the way things
Oh,
are going with MAGA.
I know it.
So I
It's
hope I didn't rant too long there about that.
No, man, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like the last thing on him, and then we'll kind of get into what's going on today within like the GOP and the war and all that stuff is do you like I can imagine that he is getting roadblocks on everything that he's trying to do right now. Like there is no more like area of the government that is more entrenched with bullshit than like what he's trying to do right now, trying to combat big
Mm.
pharma and big agriculture and just I mean, do you have any like insider info or anything on that like with how difficult his life has been trying to change the things that he's wanted to change?
Yeah, I mean, mainly I just pull from media and what I'm hearing
Yeah,
going on. I mean, I can still be in touch with Bobby. I don't want to bother the guy. I mean, I know
he's gotta be so busy.
he's got a lot of people in his face. He just had shoulder surgery too, so I know he's recovering from that. Um, but you're right, man. He is going, well, Trump said we're going to let Bobby go wild on health. Okay. He can't touch the liquid gold, but he can go wild on health. And, largely he has let Bobby go wild. But from, I've read in Politico, I've read it on the Hill, um, that some people in Trump's orbit are like worried that Bobby might be going too far, or he really is going wild on things. Um, but like anything, man, with bureaucracy and you're up against it, and you are only one man, you are up against an institution. You are up against institutionalized corruption and the buying and paying of officials, scientists, people who decide what gets yay or nay, green lit medicines, that kind of stuff. So Bobby, in my opinion, is going at a speed that we haven't seen in HHS from a secretary, because he knew he had to hit the ground running. He knew he had to have lawyers with him. He knew that he needed a media ecosystem that was friendly to him and his agenda and the Maha agenda to help promote that, because you're going up against Big Pharma's agenda and
Mhm.
their media ecosystem that they've been able to build for decades. So it's a clash of two machines, really. And the Maha moms and the wellness minded people, man, they're a fierce group of people.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of them, man, and it's wow. I learned a lot, because I came at the Kennedy thing more from like a foreign policy, JFK, RFK assassination, '60s lore of the Kennedys, in my support for Bobby and just his willingness to speak great truths. And a lot of the people I work with were coming at it from the children's health defense angle, vaccine safety angle, um, suing like Monsanto, with the health of our foods and our water system and our soil. So those are issues that I really was not as well versed in, obviously, than a lot of people in the coalition.
Yeah.
So, I think overall, man, he's doing his best.
It's
And it's
tough.
not,
I was gonna say
it,
it's tough to get into all of this, like, health stuff because there's so much to it.
there really is, man. I mean, just farming itself is one
Yeah.
piece of it, and then the food chain, and then I know he was working with the secretary, I think, of agriculture, Brooke Collins, about beef and meat getting a label 100% American. It has to be completely American. It can't, no component of it, nothing can be from another country. So that's great. We want to support that. And we had a lot of those great regenerative farming and, um, you know, beef cattle ranchers and those kind of people gave a lot of great input to Bobby's campaign. And this is another thing I really admire about him. He listens. He genuinely listens to people. The night before one of his speeches here in New Hampshire to the New Hampshire Senate, which is a tradition that all primary candidates on either side, they get an invitation by the Senate to come and speak and address the legislature in Concord. Bobby called me and he just said, "Hey, Eric, you know, I know that the controversy around the Democratic primary is a thing that's going on. I know opioids are a big problem in New Hampshire. What should I be focusing on? What should I talk about in my speech tomorrow?" And you know, that is incredibly humbling for a guy like me who has been in the game for a long time, to actually get that call from the candidate himself,
Yeah.
and not a wall of people and gatekeepers and, oh, don't talk to him.
Yeah.
Bobby wanted my advice. He wanted to know what I thought.
That's
So
crazy. I'd tell him,
he,
you know better than me, buddy. Like, I don't
yeah,
know what to say.
yeah. I mean,
That's awesome, man.
I,
Good for
ca- I,
you.
yeah. So that put a lot of wind in my sails and my confidence, and that actually I have been deeply researching the world of geopolitics and parapolitics and the nature of power for almost 25 years, really, since 9/11
Uh-huh.
happened. And that in some areas I do actually know what I'm talking about. So it was empowering to have a figure like him, who is held in such high regard, by a lot of sectors of society, and as powerful a voice he is, looking to a guy like me and everyone else in his campaign who wanted to advise him on areas that they have dedicated their life and their research and their intellect and brain power towards. So he's still doing that inside the machine, and he's trying, man. He's
Yeah.
we've got under 3 years now to keep going, and you're always battling politics, you're battling factions, because the Maha and the MAGA marriage, at first was very exciting and a unified thing, but cracks happen quick, man. People get
Yeah.
jealous, people get territorial. There's a lot of money involved in these things.
A
And
lot of money.
you always just end up being in high school, man.
Yeah.
No matter what
Yeah. You
industry or
never get
what you're
out.
in, man. People behave in cliques. They behave in groups. They talk shit about each other. They backstab. They grift. You know, there's that in every campaign.
Yeah. It's
But Bobby's
it's the Matthew McConaughey, "I get older and they stay the same age," you
they
know?
stay the same age. Yeah, exactly. And Bobby's intentions are pure, though. I mean, that
Oh,
my opinion
I
is
totally
that
believe it.
he is not in this. He really did not have to do this. He did
No.
not have to put himself through a presidential campaign. The just
The death threats, the
d-
like,
death
all of
threats.
everything that comes with it.
Every skeleton in his closet being dredged up. You know, he said at the announcement, "I have so many skeletons in my closet. If they could if they could vote for president and vote for me, I'd be king of the world." You
That's
know,
a
so
great
he knows
line.
he's a flawed man. He knows that he's not been a perfect person his whole life. None of us have, but he put it all on the line, man.
Yeah.
And I will always admire RFK for that, and he will always have my support. And I really don't think this will be his last act being
Good.
HHS
Good.
secretary.
You
So
know, the thing
yeah.
I worry about the most with, like, what he's doing right now is, after I got hurt, like, one of the retraining aspects of, like, workers' comp was to send me to college, so I went to college for 2 years. I got paid to go to college. I would never pay to go to college because it's a scam. But, like, I in, like, one of the geopolitics classes that I was taking, um like, the big thing that they were talking about in the books that, they had us reading was, like, industry capture. Trump is in, and he's got all of these people who are antithetical to the EPA and, all of these different and he's putting them in to dismantle these institutions, and they're just freaking out within these books. The problem was by the time I'm reading these books, Biden's already in office, and everything that Trump did and all of his appointees did had already been overturned, and they were back to normal again. And like
Right.
that's kind of the main thing that I worry about with Bobby is like I like you, I have no doubt that he has pure intentions and that he's doing the right thing. But I worry that like this thing is so entrenched and the swamp is so deep that no matter what he does, it'll just get overturned by the next guy. So it's
It's
impossible to say really. Like, hopefully he's good enough and smart enough to like put roadblocks in to at least slow them down when the next, swamp
yeah.
monster, swamp thing
And
gets in.
well, that is a big part of it. It is entrenched, but another thing about it is it's an elevation of consciousness and a different way of thinking about things and
Mm,
approaching how government can work for people and putting in different kinds of people in government instead of just all lobbyists, instead of all pharma execs, instead of all Wall Street people, venture capital people. Put in some people who own farms. Put in some
mhm,
people who are cattle ranchers. Put in people who are down in the dirt, have their hands in the soil every day, feeding our country. Let's hear from them. And Bobby, he elevates and lifts those voices up.
yeah,
And you talked about going to meetings every day as he does, and he highlighted those voices on the campaign. Let's hear from people who are addicted to drugs. Let's hear what their life is like. Now let's look at the root cause of what got them addicted to drugs. Let's examine it from every angle.
mhm,
So he's so much more deeper and digs into the complexities of an issue as opposed to what you see from everyone else in your standard political fare, which is a 30-second bullshit soundbite. So it's like I said, it's like Bobby approaches it on a spiritual level.
yeah.
So
I've always
that's
said
where,
that, like, with addiction and stuff, like, I think that if every parent read Alcoholics Anonymous with their kid when they turned 14, 15, 16, it would do 20 times more for the rate of addiction than any prohibition ever could because
oh,
it's a
absolutely.
way
Yeah,
to get to the root of the problem rather than just like cutting off one of the heads of the leviathan, that
that's
just
right.
grows right back again. So,
That's
anyways,
right.
like on to what's going on today. I think it's funny you were saying earlier, you can't touch the black gold, but Trump can, start a war, and now the old black gold's up 70% over the year, which is just insane.
Nick, we're going to have gas prices so low. They're going to be so low that we're going to go to the window to the wall, to the sweat drops down the Ayatollah's balls. Okay. Um. Oh, dude, what a betrayal. I
Yeah.
mean, I was talking to my brother about this and a friend the other day. The 24 cycle and all the campaigns I worked on and worked for and voted for and promoted, this was the first time I was ever part of something that won. a president that I supported and wanted to win. Of course, I was really in it mainly to get Tulsi and Bobby into that cabinet. Like that was for me, that was the main driving force because I've spent so much time with the two of them. I know them on a personal level, and I know they're not reptiles. And with a government full of reptiles, to even get people like that in there in some position of influence or power or just ability to change anything or move a little bit in the right direction is a net positive for me. Because otherwise, what are we looking at? We're looking at armed revolution and violence, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to grab a gun.
No.
I'm
No.
not into that, man. So I still believe in that process on some level. So um, oh, the Iran thing is heartbreaking, dude.
It is.
It was one of the main things that I was saying to people. I'm like, well, look, Kamala Harris is running around with Dick Cheney's fucking daughter. John Bolton's endorsed. She's got all the neocons in her corner. They love her. They moved from the Bushes and the Clintons, and now they're with Kamala Harris. So I'm like, of course I'm going to go in with Trump. Of course I'm going to go in with Vance and Tulsi and Bobby, the people who are speaking against that,
Yeah.
who will have headwinds going in that's going to move us away from forever war in the Middle East. No, I wasn't totally naive about it. I knew that the Adelsons have given Trump hundreds of millions of dollars. I know Trump in his first term moved the embassy over in Israel. Not even George W. Bush, Christian evangelical, did that. So I wasn't blind to how in debt Trump was to these people. But I think I was just excited about him finally getting some people around him who I have long admired and respected for their resistance to war on a bigger picture. So I got to give Joe Kent a lot of credit and
Yeah.
a lot of props. He's one of Tulsi's guys. Um, he's a fucking badass, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, some people are like, well, don't be too quick to give the guy flowers. He was CIA. He was inside the machine. But it's like, you know what, man?
He seems to
On a
have a
human,
conscience.
that's right. And on a human level, this is a guy who lost his wife there in Syria in 2019 to a suicide bombing. And he made the point on Sean Ryan's podcast that in his 11 deployments and in and out of military, CIA, private contracting, special operations, he's lost hundreds of friends in these wars. And this is what I was really cheering for. He went back to Iraq in his resignation letter and said, we went into Iraq because of Israel. And we 100% did Iraq because of the Zionists and because of Israel. And for him to say that, someone who had the position he had and the access to intelligence and knowledge mixed in with his own experience is very, very powerful. And we're seeing the clear fracture in MAGA with
Yeah.
respects to foreign policy and this unconditional support of Israel. And we are long overdue for this reckoning in our country.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what do you think about like the position that Tulsi's in right now? I was a little disappointed with, she kind of spoke to Congress recently and it seemed like she was kind of carrying water for the war party. Do you think that she would have been better off doing what Joe Kent did? Or do you think that she's still got some influence within the government right now and maybe her influence is better served by like kind of playing the game publicly and behind closed doors, kind of pushing for a resolution to this thing? I don't really have a great read on it. You know her, so I was hoping you could give us some clarity on that.
Yeah, I've been reflecting on it a lot. I think we're 22 days into
Something like
this thing
that.
with Iran,
Yeah.
22, 23 days. And it's heartbreaking because Tulsi's entire political identity in our campaign in 2020, we had shirts made that said no war with Iran. And she spoke out so eloquently about what would happen if we were to do that. Of course, we're seeing it happen and we're seeing it play out. And now we could possibly be on the eve of deploying actual boots on the ground in Iran, which I think is completely suicidal, which I
Yeah.
think is absolutely insane. And I know for a fact Tulsi does too. So I take solace and comfort in that she is still in the big show. She is still there. People are gonna. There's rumors going around. She's completely iced out. Trump doesn't listen to her at all. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
reason
I've
Trump
heard
picked her.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Trump knew what he was going to get out of her. He was going to get people like me, independent-minded anti-war people to join the coalition. Um, Same with Bobby with the Maha coalition. So, it's not that he didn't get anything out of putting her as DNI. But Tulsi, like Joe Kent and like JD Vance, served in the Iraq War, is of that same age generation, lost a lot of friends. So war is not some vagary or some theory or some video game, or some meme, or like a fictitious movie. They understand war on the most visceral, real, authentic way that a human being can. So knowing what I know, and that what's publicly available, and what people know about Tulsi, um, I feel good that she's on the inside right now. You know, you could make the argument for resigning and then going on a tour and hitting
Mhm.
the friendly podcast circuit, or debating like Joe Kent went on Mark Levin, which was great to see him go on there, even
Oh,
though
I didn't
Levin was
see
a
that.
complete snake.
Oh, he's the worst.
He's disgusting. Um, so there is currency in doing that. Um, but also, it's like you sacrifice so much. You're on this journey to get to a position of power. Do you just flush it? Do you just like wash your hands of it because it's a policy you disagree with? Because ultimately, man, this is on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Donald Trump did decide to do this. He actually, as commander in chief, decided to bomb Iran like that. Um, and he's going to have to ultimately carry the water on that. And kind of what I'm seeing happening is the others in Iran who want to negotiate do not want Kushner. They do not want Steve Witkoff, because those guys are Zionist agents of the state of Israel. Let's just
Mhm.
call a spade here. They want to see JD Vance come to the table. They want to talk to Vance because they know Vance has a better read on that. And we know Vance is against this kind of shit. He spoke out against it all leading up to the election. He said we need to move away from forever wars. I participated in one of them, and this is going to be Iran is going to make Iraq look like Disneyland.
Yeah.
And even Hegseth said that on the podcast circuit on Sean Ryan before the election, saying, I'm a recovering neocon and we have to move away. So they've all changed their tune. And they all, of course, want to keep favor with Trump. They want to keep their jobs. I understand that. There's so much that goes into finally getting into a cabinet. There's a lot of sacrifice that's made. And at the end of the day, these are all human beings, and their head hits the pillow at night, and they're the ones who have to sleep with their decisions and the choices they make. So I am not jealous of Tulsi's position right now.
No, me neither.
On a friend level and on a human level, I will always support Tulsi. She is a good person. She wants what's best for America. She's deeply devoted to our country and our troops. And she doesn't want to see um, another Iraq happen, another forever war. And I don't know if you remember this video, if you caught this from last summer before we hit Iran's nuclear sites. Tulsi released a video about being on the precipice of nuclear war that she made in Japan. Did you see that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, which was like a basically kind of a warning, like, "Hey, man, we are being goose stepped into what could be a nuclear holocaust." So
Yeah,
try and go back and watch that video.
I
There's a
will.
reason. There's
I'll
a
look at
reason
that.
the timing when she put that video out just before we hit Iran. I was like, yes, that's the Tulsi I know and love. She's in there. This is her signal that, hey, I'm here and I'm doing everything I can to be a guardrail. So you know what, man? Bottom line, I'd rather have her in there.
Okay,
That's
good to
that's
know.
that's where
Good
that's
to
where I'm
know.
at on it.
It seems like the Republicans essentially have thrown away the midterms at this point. Like
Yeah.
it does not seem like there's even a chance that they're going to hold the House or the Senate after this debacle. And looking forward to 2028, like I don't know what Vance is going to do because like you said, I think that he is not all the way on board with this type of shit, but it's really hard to say, you know. Um I don't think that Trump is going to knight him or put the crown on him. I think that Trump is going to go for Rubio. I think that
Mm.
Rubio is a more solid pick for the Adelsons and
Yes.
and just like by reading the room when he's sitting, in a cabinet meeting with Bobby and with Rubio and with Vance, like he's always going to Rubio first. He's never going to Vance first. He's never going to Bobby first. He's always going to Rubio. And it seems like Rubio is his guy. And Rubio can run on, I'm going to do the exact same thing that Trump did. Will he? Who knows? But like that's a solid platform for him to run on. He's going to lose a coalition like you, like me. He's gonna lose the
Mm.
libertarians, he's gonna lose the independents, but he's gonna keep that diehard Trump dick rider that just rides or dies, like, whatever with whatever he
It's
does, and then that puts Vance in a really precarious situation where he's gonna have to rebuke some of Donald Trump's policies. Otherwise, he's gonna be in the same position that Kamala Harris was in this past
right,
election.
right.
Biden was great. I'm going to just do everything that he did. Where a big portion of the population was like, we don't want that. That's
We
like
don't want that.
not what we're looking for. We're looking for change here. And
That's
she
right.
was unwilling to, rebuke anything that he did within the presidency. And like this puts Vance in that position where he's going to have to keep the ride or die Trump dick riders on his team somehow. And then he's also going to have to appeal to the independents and the libertarians. And like, I don't know how he navigates that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the Trump MAGA thing is just a North Korean style cult of personality
It is.
thing. It's scary, you know. I love the character of Trump. I love a lot of the shit he's done and the trash talk he's done. But at the end of the day, like Reed Coverdale and I say to each other, you always end up with John McCain foreign policy.
Yeah.
And I would argue this was a fever dream of John McCain bombing Iran like this and the Lindsey Grahams of the world. And Rubio does follow in that neocon tradition for sure. And
Nobody's
that's where,
happier than Lindsey Graham
yeah.
right now.
Oh, oh, I love this. I'm buying new dresses for when I go do Strait of Hormuz. I'm going to tour out there. We're going to do Yankee Doodle Dandy. I'll be out there in my high heels and a new skirt that I got. Um, yeah, Vance is. I think though too, for Trump's ego will not allow him to appoint an heir apparent so easily. He wants them to fight for it. He wants an apprentice style knife fight. You
That's
know that
interesting. Yeah.
people tripping over themselves for the approval of the king and the anointment from the king. So I think you might see a mix of that. Um, but yeah, Vance and Rubio, they've been pretty quiet overall in the last 22 days, man. You haven't. I know Rubio is for him. He wants his legacy of Secretary of State to be cemented on regime change and taking over Cuba.
Mhm.
That has been part of his life's work. It's been something he's been focused on, because of his background, his Cuban
Yeah.
heritage, and being from down there in Florida. So I know that if he just keeps going along with Trump and doesn't raise a stink, Trump will, yeah, go ahead, take Cuba. You can do it, little Marco. Have it. It'll be incredible. So Marco wants that. It's always been a project of Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
So he'll have that wind in his sails with a segment of neocon voters and imperialist-minded Republicans, um, if he runs in 28. And yeah, Vance, who is Vance's natural constituency? Um, I don't know. It's like you said with Kamala Harris. She was lumped in with Biden. She owned all of Biden's baggage, passed right on to her, and it's going to get passed right on to Vance from Trump. So it'll be very interesting and entertaining for those of us who are engaged and like to be in the fight. Um, and I have no doubt it will get really ugly and messy pretty quickly.
Yeah. They couldn't deport all the Hispanics, so let's just take another island of them. Why not,
We
you
will.
know?
We will. We're gonna. We have to, Nick. We have to take it. We have to take Greenland. We have to take Puerto Rico. We have to take Guam. Okay, Guam's a shithole. I'm gonna make Guam so great. Okay, we're gonna make it so great.
Yeah. Oh man. I watched this interview on Tucker the other day with this Chinese historian who was he had some very dark predictions for this. He was saying it's possible that we take Canada, that we take Mexico, and we're looking at a global energy crisis, which I think is almost assured at this point. Like you've got China and the United States are codependent nations. Like
That's right.
it's like a drug addict and their drug dealer. You
In
know
the
what I
dealer.
mean? Yeah, it's like that's exactly what it is. If the Strait of Hormuz stays closed, all of the prices on everything. I bought this shirt on Amazon a couple months ago for, probably like 20 bucks or something like that. And in a couple months it's going to be 40
Mm,
because why wouldn't it
yeah.
be,
Right.
Energy
Right.
is the basis of like all production at this point. Like if you don't have cheap energy, you don't have, access to cheap goods. And we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot by offloading all of our production over to a foreign nation. And, now we're going to be protecting shipping lanes for the Chinese, which
It's what.
is
It's wild,
wild.
dude. It just shows you this thing was not thought out at all.
No,
It was done in true social rage declarations by the king at all hours.
Yeah.
with his brain addled on aspartame uppers. You
Yeah.
know,
You get that Sudafed up and you rip a
get
line of
get
Sudafed.
in there. Let's get going. We're gonna rock and roll. We took Maduro so quickly. That had to have been like a record, Nick. Okay,
Yeah.
and we had a machine. I can't talk about it, but it's called discombobulator. Okay, it's a discombobulator, and it makes people's head turn into jello. It does.
I think that Venezuela might have been an afterthought after the 12-day war where they looked at this and he's got all these people pushing him, "Hey, let's continue, let's regime change, let's
Let's
do
do
this
it,
thing
baby.
over in Iran." And he goes,
Lock and
"Well,
load.
oil that's going to affect oil prices, so why don't we take Venezuela?" And right now Shell and Chevron are both doing major deals down in Venezuela to get, wells online and
Mm,
trying to up production. And like right now where I'm at in Idaho, gas prices are up. They're not up as much as like oil is by the barrel, but
mhm.
I know that like the US and a couple European nations and a couple other nations have like released a bunch of strategic reserve oil into the system, so they're able to kind of keep prices down temporarily. But, we're
Right.
not far off from this thing really spiking on everybody. And that's something, like we were saying earlier, it's already impossible to buy a freaking house in this country. It's going to
It
be
is.
impossible to drive a car at some point.
And I don't know. You ever listen to David Icke?
I have, yeah.
He's on bigger picture, that this is part of their play to limit our movement
Yeah.
physically where you and I go.
Mhm.
Can I drive 2 hours and go visit my aunt and uncles if gas is $7 a gallon? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I have to pick. Am I going to eat for the week, or am I going to gas up my car so that I can take a trip that I don't is not vital to my survival, but I would like to see my aunts and uncles. It's going down that path, man.
Same
And
thing with like airline tickets.
yeah,
Once
oh God,
airline fuel, I mean,
mm,
tickets are already insane to
it's
fly
insane,
on an
dude.
airplane, and
Yeah,
you got fuel prices going up. It's gonna. And all of
well,
these companies, like you said earlier, are like evil reptilian,
oh,
profit driven maggots, and
it's
they're gonna all up their prices right now just
yeah,
because they
oh,
can.
absolutely, man. They want to squeeze us much as they can in as little time possible, and demoralize us, and just break us down to the point where we're like, okay, okay, I want to see my family. I want to be able to travel outside of a 100-mile radius of my house with my car like I used to be able to do. Yeah, I'll get your real ID. Yeah, I'll get your eye
Yeah,
scanning thing. David Icke said brilliantly, if you want to know what the West will be looking like in 20 years, look now to the East. And look what they got going in China, dude. It is a fucking technocratic hellscape.
yeah,
It's a nightmare of dystopic levels, dude, that a lot of Americans can't even fathom.
yeah. China doesn't
It's
fuck
just
around. You
it's a
know.
grid, dude. You were in the grid,
Yeah.
and they want that here in America. And I really feel Gaza is going to be the really big laboratory for that. They
Ugh.
cleared that place out, and now they got Kushner and Witkoff and Palantir and all those ghouls who are going to be involved in the redevelopment and the rebuilding of it. And it's going to just be a Minority Report fucking hellscape.
They've
And
got
they want
nice beachfront property. We're gonna put in some hotels and some
we
resorts and a
Nick, we are
Trump
doing
Tower.
Trump Riviera on the rubble and bodies of 100,000 Palestinian
Oh
children. It's going to
god.
be unbelievable.
Oh,
And
it's
you have to like make a joke to, because otherwise
yeah,
you cry.
yeah,
It is so abhorrent and so anti-human and so disgusting.
yeah.
And
One of the things that like really like I as a kid, like I didn't know anything about anything. My parents weren't political. We were into dirt bikes and sports and stuff like that. And I never really thought about any of this shit. Like I bought the propaganda for 9/11 and, the Iraq
mhm,
war and all of that stuff. And as I got older, when I got hurt, like I kind of ran out of stuff to watch on TV, you know?
right.
And I started like finding podcasts at one point, like um and I remember, like, I came across Dave Smith fairly
Mm,
early on, and I'm kind of listening to him talk about libertarianism. Like, I think this is kind of my thing. Like, I've never felt like the Republicans and the Democrats really, like, liked me or like they both hate me for different reasons. And like one of the things that like I never really had thought about was war, and I
mm,
I never really put a lot of thought into it. It was just kind of one of those things that was inevitable in human nature and like I just never really put any thought to it. And like once I like started dealing with the amputation. And like, you know, phantom limb pain sucks. Like
Mm.
for some people, it's not so bad. For others, it's really bad. I'm one of the ones that has it really bad. Like my hand just screams at me all day, every day. It's like an electrocution, cold shock. Like it's awful. And I have the best doctors in the country. I had my amputation done at the Mayo Clinic. The guy
Yeah.
who builds my prosthetics works directly with the Mayo Clinic. Like the guy's a genius. One of the
Top level.
smartest he's one of the smartest, like, most talented people I've ever met in my life. Like, not a joke at all. My doctor is, like, growing human body parts to try and create a hand in a vat type of thing. Like, these people are
Jeez.
smart, they're capable, they've got me on the best medications that they can find, and then you think about, like, some poor kid in Gaza who gets an injury like mine, and what do they get? A dull, rusty knife, a rock, and, a stick to hobble around on for the rest of their life. And it really made me think like, God, like it's so hard for me having the best medical, you know, available
With the
in
infrastructure of the United States.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
you go to all of these poor people who did nothing wrong, who just grew up in the
Mhm.
wrong country and was born in the wrong place and are
Right.
already, abused by evil dictators. And then here we come to save the day and blow their
Mm.
fucking leg off or their arm off. And then they're
Right.
screwed for the rest of their life with no medical care whatsoever, you
And
know?
even if they can get to a hospital, the
Yeah.
IDF is gonna bomb it while they're
Yeah. It's
there
not going to have
and murder
electricity. They're not going to,
murder all the doctors and kill
yeah,
everybody and destroy
exactly.
it.
And, like, that really
Yeah.
hit home for me when I started thinking about it in that way, and it was like, it gets me
Yeah.
choked up even talking about it because, like,
Of
I know
course.
how difficult it's been for me, and
On
I
your
have,
level.
like,
Yeah.
all of the advantages of
Mhm.
being an American citizen where, like, they
Right.
don't have anything, they've got
No,
nothing. They
they
don't
have
even
nothing.
have the education to know that they have nothing a lot of the time, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
ugh, it's such a
it's
disgusting thing to know that,
it's hard.
like, my tax dollars like, I've
Yeah.
worked the average American works, like, 150 days a year just directly for the government, and that
Oh,
money
yeah.
is
Oh,
going
yeah.
to dismember young
Yes.
children who've done
Yeah.
nothing wrong except be
Yeah.
born in the wrong country, and it really
Yeah.
rips me apart.
Yeah. No, dude, I couldn't have said it better. And then that is what has fueled me the last 25 years, because I've had the knowledge of it, and I've been so enraged and outraged by it, that we owe it to humanity to whatever voice we have,
Yeah,
whatever platform we have, speak about it. Don't shut up about it.
yeah,
Bring awareness to it. Mock the powerful, mock the evil that's doing it. Call them out on a daily basis. Don't go down to their level of violence and demonic activity and disregard for human life. We have to be the complete opposite of what they are.
yeah.
So that's
I'm
what we
never
have to
gonna
do.
I'm never gonna have 1,000,000 people watching my podcast. Like, when I started the
Oh, neither am
podcast,
I.
I thought it was gonna be a lot easier to grow an audience than it actually is, and I'm fine with that. Like, I have no interest in being Joe Rogan. I don't want that. Like, I enjoy doing what I'm doing, and, like, I'm never gonna influence 1,000,000 people to make the right decision on this, but what I can do is have a slight influence on my friends and family, you know?
That's
I
it,
can
man.
have a
It's a
small
ripple.
influence. Hey, maybe, I've got a stepbrother who's like 13 years old right now. His dad's a former cop. Maybe with my influence, he won't be a cop or he won't go into the military.
He
You
won't
know what I
join the
mean?
military.
Like,
He won't go into the meat grinder. And you know what, dude?
and
It's
that's a
funny you say
great
that.
thing to do.
It is, and that is exactly where we have the most power and influences with our own sphere, and then those spheres have their spheres. And something you said, even if it's one thing you said to someone over dinner or something,
Yeah.
it will stay with them because I never heard anyone speak about it. I never heard someone with such passion and conviction talk about it the way you did. Um, yeah, connecting your amputation with the amputation of children in Gaza. A lot of Americans can't even put themselves, first of all, in your position as an American having an amputation, and then as a young child in Gaza having to deal with that, and then thinking, yeah, wait a minute, amputation's horrible either way, having that injury,
Yeah.
but there is a total different
And my
circumstance of
family has
someone that,
seen how hard it is for me. They know,
right,
and then
right,
you get that perspective and you go, gosh,
yeah,
that would be awful if my
oh,
young child got an amputation over a bomb being, you know, dropped
Yeah,
on a young girl's school. We're just dropping bombs on young girls'
yeah,
schools,
right. A
And
bomb
like,
signed by Nikki Haley,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh,
So we have to, you can do as much as you can with this. I've gone through periods where I had to take breaks from it, and it can bum you out and burn you out. And you can't lose sight of what really matters is your friends and family and your people around you who lift you up, who light you up, who bring you joy. Spend as much time as you can with them doing the things you love and try to have balance with it. So
yeah.
I've always struggled with that, but I think I've gotten a little better with it.
Yeah,
But
it's tough, but like you
yeah.
said, we do what we can, and even
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
just a little bit here and there,
Oh,
it
dude.
helps, Everybody
Us.
everybody working together moves the needle just a little bit here and there,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Absolutely, man. And we won't give up our humanity, which is the entities that control the evil and those vibrations. They are the opposite of humanity. They're the opposite of love and kindness and compassion and empathy. So the more we can do that in our own lives, that's how we counter that and push back against that. So
So
whoever hears,
what's going on with Jackman Radio? Are you guys coming back?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've actually we finally got our own studio space.
Oh,
We
cool.
podcast has been going 10 years, and we finally got a stable set space where the person who owns it and manages it is right on the same page as us.
Are you on a
And
different YouTube channel now?
no, it's still Jackman Radio
Huh, I looked up your
and
guys' podcast before because I was thinking
on
I
YouTube.
hadn't seen much on YouTube, and the last maybe I didn't click the live or
Click
something
on
like.
lives. That's
Oh,
what we
you're
so
doing lives. That's
yep. So we
okay. Okay.
we live stream, and then that stays on the channel, and then we take the audio from that and put it on Podbean, Spotify, Apple, and iTunes. Um, and yeah, we're trying to do like a couple Fridays a month. We finally got an AV guy who knows what he's doing. He has all the equipment, so he comes to our studio, sets us all up. We stream. We're talking now to media people who do clips and like clip packages and
Yeah.
that stuff. We want to scale the thing up. I mean, it's what I would like to do full time as my job. So we're on Patreon. We got like 20 paying patrons a month. I'd like to get that up. So it just takes time when everything's out of pocket and you don't have the backing of
Yeah.
a foreign government or the CIA or the Saudis, and you're out of pocket. It takes time, but we're not giving up. We're keeping at it, and these are the kind of conversations that keep me going, man, and sustain for
Good to
sure.
hear. Good to hear.
Yeah,
I have too many YouTube subscriptions, so I don't see everything anymore. I need to go
yeah.
through and like
Yes.
unsubscribe from a bunch of the channels that I
There's a lot.
never
There's a lot
watch,
out there,
right?
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise out there. It's a tough thing to keep going, but you just keep at it.
Good. Well, I'm glad you guys are still going. That makes me happy
Thank you.
because I had looked and I looked in the wrong place and I was like, oh man, they're not doing their podcast anymore. That sucks. Like, I wonder what happened. So good.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
glad you
Nope.
guys are still rocking and
Still
rolling.
going. I
You
think
guys
we hit
had Reed
episode
Coverdale on
211.
there. Reed's
We had
a
him on. We
Reed's
had
a
Reed on
fellow.
last Friday.
Yeah, Reed's a
Yeah.
fellow lineman, so I always relate well to him. Like
Oh,
I was a lineman before I got hurt, so
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I always
Reed's
relate well to him. He's a good dude.
he's awesome, man. He's taken a semi-retirement from the podcasting world because he's bought in 70 acres of land up here,
Oh, good for him.
and he's engaged to a beautiful, wonderful woman, and he's getting married, and he's terraforming 70 acres in here in New Hampshire with his brother. So I'm so proud of that dude, and that's another way you can resist the machines is you
Yeah.
go and do like that. That is a what Reed is doing is a big fuck you to all them.
Yep. And I
So
think like that's the future in a lot of ways. Like
it
I've
is.
discussed with my family and friends before is like we need to find some property and we
Mm,
need to get like 4 families in it, 5
yes,
families, buy a couple
yes.
100 acres. We split it
Ah,
up in the way that we
mhm,
decide to split it up, and then we
that's right.
have some sort of contract or pact to where if you're gonna sell your land, you have to get the approval of whatever,
We're
70% of the families that are here
we're
in
a
order to
village.
sell it.
We're our own
Exactly.
village,
Exactly.
dude. I'm so on board with that, and that's one thing I love and admire and respect about like Italians and those cultures, man. The family stays near each other.
Yep.
They're not psyoped in this thing where I have to go move to some fucking heartless cyborg
Yep.
city, work in some gray building with people who I fucking hate, with food that sucks, with traffic, with a million people up my ass.
Mhm.
No, you can stay where you're from. I mean, my
Yep.
brother and I, we stayed around where we grew up, man. And I have no plans on leaving. Most of my family are in this area. They're within like a 2-hour car ride.
That
That is
was
what's valuable to me.
That was one of the eye-opening things to me about moving to Maui, was that it's so difficult to live there. Like, it's easy to do what I did and move there and rent a room in somebody's house and kind of just exist,
Kind of
and
flop.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But to
sure.
take it from, like, renting a room to owning a house is damn near
Oh,
impossible
dude.
if you're not, like, already
Yeah.
an established businessman or something like that. Like, it's just
Mhm.
impossible. But what the locals do is they just have a big house that they've owned for, fuck, 100 years or something like that, and they all live together, and it's not frowned upon. Like, where I grew up,
No.
when I grew up in Northern California, it's like, if you're still living with your parents when you're 20 or 22 years old, it's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Get out of the house."
You're
Like,
looked at like a failure and a loser.
exactly. Where there, it was like, no, we're going to do what we've got to do to survive. It's not frowned upon to live with your family. And like, I think that was like one of the great lessons about that show Yellowstone, which is pretty
Mm,
decent. It's like their family stuck together. They all lived on the same property. When, I worked for a roofer at one point when I first started there before I got a job at a bar. And he had gotten divorced. Him and his wife had built this incredible house, like, up on the mountain overlooking the ocean. It was just beautiful, like, beautiful pool, the whole works, and he couldn't afford to live there anymore. So,
mm,
he moved into the garage and rented the house to somebody else, and somebody else
mm.
just lived in his house until he could afford
Wow.
it again. And at that same time, like, my parents had gotten divorced, my dad's living in the house that he built with his own 2 hands, and he can't afford it. Like, he's still living in the house and renting out, like, the attic, where it's like, "Dude, move into the attic and rent out the house until you can afford it again." And that was like a big shift in my mind, and even though, like, I own a house here in Idaho, I'm single, and, like, I rent the rooms out in my house because I don't need the house to myself, and at this
Right.
point, it keeps me from having to work, which is nice. I don't wanna go back
Hell
to
yeah,
work
dude.
at this point. Like, I
No,
have so
fuck
many
no.
medical problems that, like, I
Yeah,
don't
dude. Just
need to
try to
go
live
back
as
to
best a
work.
life for you
Yeah.
and as comfortable as you can, man.
Yeah, and
That's
I love
good.
it. I'm happy with it. I don't feel like a failure for having to rent
You're not.
rooms in my house
No,
in order
no,
to, support my mortgage and everything like that. And like,
no.
I got the house for cheap enough that, like, I pay my mortgage and then some with the people living
Yeah.
here, which is
Yeah, and you
it's
could
just great, you know?
yeah, you can live and have time because time is really all we have.
Yeah.
And it's very, very limited and it's obviously finite. And I love that, man. That is beautiful. I love the idea of acreage and separate compounds within acreage with your family.
Yeah.
And that's how you create wealth. Create
Now
wealth,
Now
you
all we
pass it
need
down.
is the military to release the blueprints for the nuclear reactors that they run in their fricking aircraft carriers so we can
Oh,
buy our own nuclear reactors on the property.
the small ones you're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, oh
They
yeah, dude.
solved
Yeah.
climate change already. That's
Oh,
something that I always joke about is, like, they already solved climate change with those reactors. They just don't
so-
wanna give them up.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, yeah, I've done a 180 on nuclear energy. Oliver Stone's documentary called Nuclear Now. I
That
don't
was
know if you
really
saw
good.
that.
Yeah, it was really good.
That blew me away, dude. He went and showed France's nuclear program. They run 80% of that country on nuclear power.
Yeah.
Now I know France is a lot smaller than America, but you could scale up. You could do it here in America, no problem.
Yep. We've
But
had it's been a dirty word for so long that all of our best
mm,
engineers have gone into tech instead of going into nuclear engineering, where we could have small modular reactors powering my
yes,
HOA right now if people would have
oh,
actually, like,
entire
put the time and energy into creating them.
entire communities, and we
Yep.
got psyoped on nuclear warheads and
Yep.
nuclear weapons and nuclear waste and meltdowns.
Yep.
Yeah, no, Oliver Stone did a great job dissecting the propaganda around the
Yeah.
anti-nuclear psyop. So
He's great.
that could be its whole other
I
podcast.
know, I know. Eric, I could talk to you all night. We went over an hour. I
Oh,
didn't even
dude.
realize until a few minutes ago,
S-
and then
So great,
we
so
just
great
keep
chatting with
going.
you, man. It's
Yeah,
been
man,
awesome.
we'll have to do this again at some point, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if I'm ever in New Hampshire, which at this
Oh, dude.
point I doubt, but I would love to come and see it because it's so hard to travel at this point. Like,
Oh,
I hate
oh,
traveling. It's one of the
dude,
things
I
I
can't
hate the
even
most.
imagine.
Like, oh, I hate it. So, but if I'm
Yeah.
ever there, I'd love to hook up and
Oh, you have an open
have
invite into
dinner.
the Jackman Radio Studio,
Excellent,
and
excellent.
we'll show you the sights and sounds. Yeah, no, it's been great catching up with you, dude. Thanks for having me on, and you just keep doing what you're doing. And this is how we elevate consciousness and keep the light keep the light going.
Awesome, man. Well, it was a pleasure again, and Glad to have you on again, and like I
Absolutely.
said, you're
Thank you.
my first guest, so it's good to
It's
to
great.
have the evolution to come back and
Yeah.
hopefully did a better job this time than I did the first
Oh,
time.
dude, it looks great, man. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Great
Awesome.
job, man.
All right, have a good one. See ya.
You, you too.